So, in the past 5 years, we've, rough calculations, spent about $35 million or billion dollars subsidizing petrol, so to speak. What should we be doing now? Now, with the way things are, what should Nigeria be thinking? Because that argument, remove subsidy, don't remove subsidy. Labour said if you dare, and then the government saying we have to. 2016 budget, it's dropped. And the papers today are saying the FG is threatening to take it out completely.
Yeah, you see, one other thing is that most people always say Labour this, Labour that. Each time you start seeing Labour talk on TV, you know that things are going wrong. The back channel, Labour is a lot more effective in those back channel communication. Now you talk about refinery, people talk about refinery, people talk about whatever. But this same Labour, in 2005, signed for the privatization of the refinery. Government did nothing about it. Labour, Pengassin themselves came up, signed, during Obasanjo, signed and said, okay, we've looked at these refineries. We believe government intervention is not making these refineries go the way it should go. Please privatize. There was a president before me who signed on that. And when I became Pengassin president, I still signed and said, let's go ahead with it. Government didn't do anything. That's why I was telling you earlier, when I told her, I said, sometimes they just talk and then they don't implement anything. And so Labour moved on beyond that and said, these guys are not ready. Then Labour again will now ask you, okay, what are your plans? What are you putting in place to make sure that whatever effect that may come, how do you intend to cushion it? And everybody they all go around on a white good chase.
Shopee was one of the methods that the Jonathan administration came up with.
Yes.
How effective would you say it was?
To some extent, yes, but again, it was also hard hoc. You see, when you look at measures that we do, it's not sustainable. You see, when you do, okay, like now between, I always say the trains are moving now between Kano to Lagos or Shopee. There are several roads. Is it sustainable?
Trains should be sustainable.
No, let me tell you now how sustainable it is. You see, when I talk about ad hoc, take for example, we're in Lagos, you run a traffic, and I know that I'll take for example, I said, the whole of Ikeja, my expectation is that in the next 10 years, population is going to increase by 20%. So what do I need to do because population is going to increase by 20% in the next 10 years? The energy consumption, what do I need to make available? Population is going to increase. What's the number of houses I need to make available?
So those are the kind of things.
So those are the things that government should be doing.
In other words, if you say, well, let's be proactive and get a sustainable plan in place, and if we talk about removal, one other thing we should be looking to discussing is the refineries.
Yes.
If you don't want ad hoc measures, then you should also be talking about the refineries, because if we have them in place, the issue of taking this crude out, get them refined, pay for some monies, talking about landing costs and so many other things in the dynamics of oil production and refining will be out of place, isn't it?
Yeah. Labour is not afraid of all of that.
So why is it that no one is looking in that direction? Building the refineries, fixing the refineries, and even having more players come in.
You don't give what you don't have.
So what is it we don't have?
Yeah, you don't give what you don't have. If you have people driving your policies and they are not thinking in a particular direction, there's nothing anybody can do about it. So what the union does, I was a former Labour leader, so I know what the way. When you notice that you are working with a group of people who don't even know where they are going, the next thing is that you play what we call you play defense. Which is okay if you don't know where you are going and you don't know what you are doing. I'm going to make sure that none of my members loses their job. So that is where Labour now play defense. Because once Labour feels that, no, these guys, we also have a research department.
Because you know when you asked that question as to whether or not government had its own research department, I chuckled because I was wondering, I said, Mr. Esele has walked in the corridors of power. If anybody should know if government has a research department, you should know.
The difference is that you can tell me, how do I say, when I say, do you have a research department, how do you prove to me that you have a research department? In terms of your policy, in terms of how you analyze issues.
But what about in terms of engagement? You have engaged with the government several times.
When you engage, if I engage with you now and I'm telling you, I put my signature and I said, we've looked at the refineries. This way even from our own members in NNPC. The National Executive Council of Pengassin had to summon all the members of NNPC and say, this refinery is becoming an embarrassment. You either have to tell us what we have to do to make those refineries work, and we gave the members an ultimatum to come up with a proposal. And they came back to the neck and said, okay, fine, government is a big clog in the wheel. too much political interference, and the only way we know we can get out of this is that let's do the NLNG model. That recommendation came from Pengasi members in NNPC.
Tell us a bit about that model.
This NLNG model is that you have a core operator, which is Shell. Shell is actually the core operator of NLNG. NNPC have their own stake in it. So the core operator, which is a private sector driven, runs. You've never had anything happen when you're supposed to get your profit, when Nigeria's supposed to get their profit, everything runs seamlessly.
So what happened to the privatization process?
So immediately we came up with it, and then we submitted it. They did nothing. So if you tell me that you have a research department, it's not just a matter for you to tell me. It's like Channels now telling us that, oh, Channels is a television station, and you say you educate us by news, and then I'm sitting down and I'm waiting for your news. There's nothing for me to learn, and you tell me you're at a TV station. So I can question you. So it is your actions that actually will tell me if actually that exists.
The government made a move to work on the refineries. They gave out some licenses. How did that play out?
The best people to answer this question is government itself. Because if
you know some of the people that got the licenses.
Yes, because if you give out licenses and people are not building, you have to go back again. This is what you call feedback, for God's sake. Why are people not building? The first thing is that you also, I belong to the school of thought that says, I don't believe that as a union that we should crush business. No. I belong to the school of thought that business needs to also exist for us to keep our jobs. That our relationship is symbiotic. So all you need to do is to go back, feedback. Why are you not setting up refineries? What do you think? What do you think I should do? Or what do you think we should do? I'll give an example now. Somebody is in court suing federal government. Earlier you talked about power. You talked about metering. These guys came, set up a factory to build meter that was commissioned by President Jonathan. And now later government said anybody can bring in meter. So at the end of the day, the man who set up that factory
is at a loss.
It's at a loss. So how do you now encourage people to come in and invest their money? So the environment itself is harsh. So nobody wants to put in their money. So it's not left for government to think things through, to know that we need to have what I call short-term, medium-term to long-term goals.
I want you to also talk about this minimum wage dispute. I know it's a very tricky one, and it's a very sensitive one as well. We know that the price of oil has dipped. It has affected revenue, greatly. What states used to get is no longer what they get. And a lot of states say, we cannot pay this 18,000 naira minimum wage as, the law says. How do you think that, they should go about it? Or how do you think they will get out of this?
I think it's very clear. I don't think it's tricky. First of all, it's the law. We had the law.
18,000 naira minimum wage is the law. But we do know that is not where the problem lies. The problem lies in the aggregation, the spread across all the other cadres, all the other layers.
Why would they say they cannot pay? Now, in 2000, first I'm going to give you, I was part of the last negotiation that brought about 18,000. What we were actually asking for was 52,000. So, and Abia, for example, Abia's state submission was 42,000. Nasarawa even went above 18,000. All of these states made submission. So it's
according to what they could pay?
Yes, they made submission according to what they could pay. I will tell you, majority of them did not. Everything they came up with was even higher than 18,000.
That's the various government.
Yes, was even higher than 18,000. And you also remember when it was even 7,500, you also had the same complaint, even when price of crude was $100 plus, from the state governors that they cannot pay. So the next thing you need to ask yourself is, what is 18,000 naira? That's first thing to. And how are these state governors living their life? Because the first question I always ask myself is that if you take, for example, Cameroon, for example, in the UK, it does not have its own private jet. No. It's even in the last 3 months, 3 or 5, 6 months.
The governors will have private jets, or the state government.
The majority of the state governors, I'm telling you now, it's only in the last 6 months you are seeing changes taking place. They all fly private aircraft. Let nobody come here and tell us this. They all fly private aircraft.
Mr. Esele, the difference between owning and flying one, are two different things. When you talk about, I was talking about state governments that own.
Yes, let me give you an example. Do you know the cost of taking a chartered flight?
I don't know.
Exactly. So I'm telling you now, when a governor takes a chartered flight, he runs into several millions. And if he does that, Because most times there is no way you don't see a state governor in Abuja at least 4 or 5 times in a year. I fly a lot, and I hardly see governors. I could tell you in the last 5 years, there are only about 3 governors I could name on my fingers that you see inside an aircraft.
Inside a commercial aircraft?
Yes, inside the commercial aircraft, I mean. So most of them, where are they flying?
So you think that this has to come...
The key for us is that everybody needs to look at itself and find out that what are you spending? We live our life as if there is no tomorrow. Look at the convoys, the various convoys of the state. It costs money to have that convoy. So if the government or the governors refuses to change, the economy will also make them change. How many all the states have security votes that are not accounted for? So
is that still feasible?
It's still feasible. Just wait for the budget. You will start seeing security vote again. So let them live. Let them sew their coat, not according to their size, according to their cloth.
Very quickly, we found like you good now. You talked about security vote without mention any name. What do you think we should be doing with our security votes going forward, not going by what we have seen? Every
one naira of taxpayers' money must be accounted for. Security vote is as good as a sludge fund.
So it must be made public.
It has to be made public.
And appropriated.
Yes, and appropriated.
Peter Esele, former TUC president, many thanks for speaking with us, and we do hope we'll keep this conversation on and see how the debate pans out on the removal of subsidy. We'll take a moment here. We'll come back. Stay with us.